Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today we have a Let's Learn About It video in regards to hybrid scrapbooking. Today's tutorial is going to be about resizing images to ensure that they are a good size for you to print out. When I first started scrapbooking with digital content, my images were really large, and I tend to scrapbook with really large images, so for me to say that they're really large means that they were really, really big. My very first hybrid layout was of Splash Mountain, and I will tell you that the log flume from the ride was really big. So I started to play around in the Silhouette Studio, trying to figure out how I can make my images the size that they need to be for my layout. This has become my personal preference in regards to planning out hybrid scrapbooking, and I thought I would share it with you. In no way do I feel like I'm an expert in this. However, I do like the way that this is done, and I thought I would just share some tips and tricks. I have created multiple tutorials in regards to some of the basics, to include adding offsets, as well as resizing your images and using the knife tool and things like that. They are linked below, and so I will not be going over them in this particular tutorial. I will try to let you know when I do come to a topic where I do have a tutorial, and you can go and check that out if you would like to see that. So I like to start out in the Silhouette Studio software, and when you open up the Silhouette Studio, it will open up to a 12 by 12 page. I like to change my mat to a 12 by 24. This gives me the canvas that I'm going to work with for a double page layout. If you're only doing a single page layout, you can leave your mat as it is. What you'll need to do is go over to the right hand side of the screen and select Page Setup. Then for your cutting mat, you need to change it to 12 by 24. Because I change mine often to landscape, it already automatically changed it for me. However, if it does come in the portrait mode, you would just come over to the right hand side and select Landscape. If your grid is on, I would recommend turning it off for this. It just makes it easier to see a white background. You do that by selecting the grid settings in page setups and then making sure that show grid is unchecked. From here, I'm going to pull in my sketch that I plan to use. For this particular sketch, I'm going to pull from Page Maps. This is their January 2023 sketch. When I click on the link to open the sketch, it will open a new window for me. I like to zoom in on my sketch, making it as large as possible. I use the snipping tool on my computer. You can search for this tool. It's usually standard with most computers. When I select the snipping tool, it allows me to draw a box around an image on my screen, and it will screen capture that image for me. I do that by selecting New. I draw a box around the page map sketch that I would like to use. Once my snipping tool comes up with the image that I just captured, I do like to edit it by selecting the image crop at the top and coming in as close as possible to the sketch. I'm then going to right click on the image and select Copy. Going back to my Silhouette Studio, I can right click and select Paste. And now my sketch is in my Silhouette Studio. I'm going to make it as large as possible so that it fits across the 12 by 24 mat. It's okay if it's a little big. We're just using this as a size proportion. Now, I did bring in the papers that I plan to use. I do have a tutorial on bringing in the papers and the images into Silhouette. It is linked below in my tutorials if you would like to check it out. From here, I'm going to bring over this yellow paper with the red stars on it by selecting the paper and then on my keyboard selecting Control-C to copy it. You can also right click and select Copy. And then back over on my sketch page, I'm going to do Control-V to paste. You can also right click and select Paste. I'm going to use this paper to start to build up my layers on my layout. It doesn't have to be exact because I don't print my papers from the Silhouette Studio. I actually print them from Canva. I do have a tutorial for that as well. It is linked below in my tutorial playlist. I do use it as a placeholder here so that I can figure out how much paper I need to print out. Looking at this right here, I know that I'm going to need a full 12 by 12 sheet of paper. I know that it is going to be cut off with the white paper that's on the sketch here. I'm actually going to use a blue paper for that. So I really just need this top part and bottom part. So I'll keep that in mind for when I go over to Canva to print my paper. But I'm just going to leave it as is for right now. I'm then going to bring in my blue paper as well as the spring paper and add it to my mat as a placeholder. Now I did squish down the paper. I do not like the way that this looks. I would not do it this way over in Canva. But again, it's just a place for me to be able to see where the paper is so that I can figure out how large my embellishments are. The next step that I'm going to do is to create some photo placement boxes. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side and select the drawing tool. I'm then going to select the rectangle. I'm going to make a box. It does not matter the size because I'm going to change the size in just a moment. Coming up to the top where it says width and height, I'm going to change this to 4x6 since that's what my sketch calls for. You do have to make sure that your aspect ratio is unlocked. At this point, I'm going to move my sketch down below my mat so that I can see exactly where the photos go. I'm going to change my photo mat to white by going over to the fill style on the right-hand side and selecting white. I'm going to duplicate the box so that I have two photos, just like my sketch calls for. I'm then going to repeat this process and create a 6x4 box for my other two photos. Now that I have my 4 photo placeholders created, I'm going to add them to my layout where the sketch calls for. And then I'm going to rearrange my paper so that it lines up with the sketch. Once I have my photos in place, I do like to group them because it just makes it easier when they start to move around if they're all grouped. So I select all of the images and then right click and select group. Again, this does not have to be perfect. It just is going to give you an idea of where things are placed so that you can size your images appropriately. I have brought in all of the images that I plan to use on this layout. I do have a tutorial on how to upload your images to the Silhouette Studio, and it is linked below in the tutorial playlist. Then I'm going to start to build up my layers and clusters. The first thing that I'm going to do is bring in these 3 go signs because I have a plan for them. So I'm going to select all of them, right click and copy them. Going back over to my sketch map, I'm going to paste them. Over on the left-hand side, the sketch does call for some journaling as well as my title. I'm going to have a really large title cluster in this area, and my journaling isn't going to go here. And I'm going to start with these go signs. I zoomed in so that you can get my idea. My plan is for the go signs to be flush to the bottom of the photos. So I'm going to start with this green one and move it up. And I want to make it a little bit smaller because I do have my photo here going behind it and I don't want that. I want it to be a little overlapped, but not much. So I'm just going to select the image and then use the squares on any sides of the image to make it smaller. Once I have it the size that I would like, I'm then going to go in and resize the orange and the red one so that it fits inside of the green one, making it look like a tunnel. I can use the align tool by selecting all of the images and going to the top where it says align, and then I want to align to the bottom. And I zoomed in quite a bit just to make sure that I have enough space in between each one of these so that there is a little bit of space between them. I'm going to go back to my mat that has all of my images on it, and this time I'm going to bring in Mr. Slinky Dog. I'm going to resize him to the size that I think would look good in that area. The next area that I'm going to work in is my title, so I'm going to bring in the Slinky Dog as well as the blocks that spell out fun. I can bring my fun letters forward by selecting the bring to the front at the top. And I can't stress this enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get the sizing correct. The next thing that I'm going to bring in is this little slinky. I'm going to zoom way in because I want this slinky to fit between that K and the G. And I know that I want it to sit behind it, so I am going to use the bring to the back tool to bring it behind my title. Now, taking another look at the sketch, I noticed that there are 2 flowers, and that's the area that I'm going to add my flames as well as some flowers. So I'm going to go back to my mat that has all of my images on it. I'm going to select both of my fires and copy them and then paste them over in my sketch map. I'm then going to zoom back in and resize my fires. For the fire at the top, I don't like the fact that the fire is going in the same direction, both in the top and bottom. So I am going to flip this fire by right clicking, and I have the option to flip horizontally or flip vertically. I'm going to select flip horizontally, and now my fire is going in the opposite direction. I'm then going to bring in all of my flowers, and arrange them with the fire to create my cluster. I will continue to do this with all of the images that I want on my layout. I can go in and duplicate images by selecting the image and selecting duplicate at the top. This will bring in the same image so that I can reuse it on my layout if I need to use it in multiple places. For these two stars here, I like the way that the stars look, but I knew Silhouette would have a little bit of difficult time trying to cut these out because there was that space in the center. So what I decided to do was to add an offset and then change a color. I do have a tutorial on how I do this. It is linked below in the playlist. Adding these types of offsets can totally change the way that your image looks. So don't be afraid to play along with the offsets and create a completely different embellishment. Once I get my offset created, I'm going to move my stars in place and arrange them in the clusters. Now that I have my layout designed and my images sized to the size that I think would work for my layout, I am now going to create a new page on my Silhouette so that I can use the print and cut features and cut these images out. I'll start by going in and selecting the images in each one of the clusters. This is just my personal preference so that I don't forget any of the images. I select all of the images by selecting the first one and then holding the Shift key on my keyboard and selecting the rest of the images. I'm then going to right click and select copy. I'm going to go up to the top of the screen so I can create a new page. If my page setup doesn't open automatically, I'm going to open my page set and then change my cutting mat to 12 by 12 and my media size to letter. And then I'm going to change it to portrait. And now you see that my mat is the gray and my media, which is the paper that I'm going to use, is going to be the 8.5 by 11. From here, I'm going to right click and select paste. I'm going to move my images over and separate them out so that there's enough space around them so the Silhouette can cut them out. Make sure that you go over to the right hand side and open up the print and cut panel and then turn on your registration marks. I'm going to repeat this process for each one of my clusters. You may need multiple mats to ensure that everything fits. I have now added everything to my mat. I do have 2 mats. I have also gone in and added an offset to all of my images because that's the way that I prefer my images to look. I do have a tutorial on how to complete the offset for your images so that you have a white border around your images. I zoomed in on the images so that you can see what I'm referring to. When I use the print and cut features from the Silhouette is going to cut around the images with that white border, and that is done by the offset. Make sure you check out the tutorial below in regards to offset if you prefer this look as well. You can get your images really close to each other. The Silhouette usually does not have an issue with cutting out your images as long as they're not touching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to resize your images to ensure that they fit on your layout. Make sure you check out the playlist below for all of my tutorials on hybrid scrapbooking. And if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more content about hybrid scrapbooking and double page layouts, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.